All right, we're talking with Mitch Albom. We are in the dungeon where he is in the process of finishing up his next book. He's taking some time off of the radio, and we still want the listeners and also the readers of Mitch to be able to stay in touch with him, let him know what he's doing. He hasn't disappeared. He is coming back. He better come back. A lot of people like me are depending on it, but we like to see our friend do well. So the last podcast that we ended up with, we talked a little bit about the writing and some of your thought processes that went into the books and the things that happened, and then they developed from there. Now you have another novel coming out, as you said before.
Right.
First of all, I just want to know, when you sit down to write, is it a particular time of day? Do you set your alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning and get up, and then
Right.
you run over to the computer and start writing? Is there a routine?
When I'm in the throes of it, as I am now, and in the real, my days are just being devoted to writing the book. Everything else is secondary. It's the first thing I do when I fall out of bed. I literally want to take no ideas, no influence, no news, no sounds into my writing process. So I literally get out of bed, brush my teeth, throw on a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and come down here with a cup of coffee or tea, my special tea mix, and start writing right there. I don't read papers. I don't look. I don't even want to see a newspaper's headline. I don't listen to any radio, any. There's no sound between my bed and when I sit down here and write at the Mac computer, because I don't want anything in my head but pure creativity when I start. I want the story in my head from where I left off. And most of the time I'll read a few pages of what I did yesterday and get going right from there. And I'll spend the first hour or two that I'm down here just trying to go forward. Just trying to go forward and forward where the story is. Then, there'll be a natural break where you want to use the bathroom or you want to get a second cup of coffee, whatever. And when I come back, then I might go back and look at what I've done yesterday, or read it right from the beginning or something like that. But never when I first start out, because I want to. It's like when your gas tank is full, it never stays full. The minute you start using it, it starts to empty, and so you got to use what you got right at the beginning. That's when I find I'm at my most creative. Then I'll stay, at it for 3-4 hours before I'll break.
Is that normal to spend, or is it because you got the deadline coming up?
It's with the deadline.
Okay. So normally it'd be a couple hours?
If it were
a
year ago and I was just working on it, I'd do about an hour and a half, 2 hours max, and that'd be it. Because I find that with all the other things that are going on in the day and all the rest, my mind starts wandering. The phone rings, and there's charities to deal with. There's the radio show to deal with, there's sports to deal with, whatever, and that's it. My brain's up. I only have a couple hours to do it. But when I get into this, where I am now, what I call the monk mode, and why nobody's seeing me or reading me or hearing, then I can work 10 hours, 12 hours on one thing and just lock up. But the phone can't ring, and I don't read anything. It's like, for someone who's generally involved with the news, I don't watch television. I don't read a newspaper. I haven't got a clue, except for like a Lions game. I won't know what's going on, because your head has to be empty to really be that focused for 10 or 12 hours on a story. And this is a kind of a magical story anyhow to begin with. I'm not telling something that happened to me a year ago where all I have to do is remember it. I have to invent it. And when you're inventing characters and you're inventing a world or whatever, you can't have the real world of, Detroit's budget crisis or, the homeless situation or whatever it is right in front of you, where your brain is just going to kind of land there and not be able to go to these faraway places.
So what time does the alarm ring? What time do you get up?
Usually rings about 6:45.
Okay.
And, in the wintertime, it's hard. It's so dark out, If it were summertime, it might be a little earlier because it's light. But it's hard when it's pitch black to get up. At 6:45, I'll probably futz around and flopping around in bed for 10 minutes on the alarm until my wife says, will you please, actually get out of bed when the alarm goes off. And then that's it. 5 minutes later, I'm down here.
So you type everything on the computer, on the Mac?
Yes.
You don't write any hand notes anywhere? Like,
nope.
Are you, walking somewhere and go, oh, that'd be a great idea, write it down?
No, I'm always close enough to this to just get down here and do it. I write my notes inside the actual program, inside the computer, inside the Mac. I write if you were to go to the document of the book right now, of which like almost every day I create a new file for the book. So the computers end up with December 22nd book, December 23rd book, December. I'm also paranoid about like losing the files and not having them. So every now and then I'll load them onto a what do you call those little flash drive discs, or send it to somebody in an email so that it's out there in case my thing blows up. Hey, I got to come by your email and find it. And I would say if you were in that file right now, it's 400 pages long, but the book itself will only end up being 200 pages. So all the rest of it is like woodshedding and notes and all that. I keep it all there inside that one big file, and I'll go to it every now and then. You know, when I think, didn't I write something about a guitar? Didn't I write something about a guitar? And first I'll start searching for it, and then I realize that Word has this program where you can search for a word, and you put in the word guitar, and it finds it. So there it is on page 380. You know, oh good, that's what I knew I had it in here somewhere. So it's kind of keeping a very big set of juggling balls up in the air, but I can do that when I'm really, really focused.
When you wrote something, as far as rewrites, I'm assuming a typical writer, you rewrite everything?
Everything.
So as far as rewrites, the first words that you put down, will you go back today, even though you started 3 years ago, and go, you know what, I wrote this 3 years ago, I don't like it, I'm going to change it? Or, I mean...
Yeah.
When do you stop that? When do you go, I could just keep
changing
everything?
When you turn it in. You know, that's when you start. That's when you have. It's a really good question, Ray. And that's when you have to start to say to yourself, I wonder if I'm overthinking this. Because you're starting to take apart, like, the roots of the house. You know, it's like you can redecorate your house, but when you start going into the foundation, which you laid and you were really proud of when you put it in, and now you say, you know what, I need to change the foundation. That's when you wonder. And that's when you work with an editor. And an editor says, leave it alone. You know, it's fine, leave it alone. But I started with a sentence of the book, a man sits alone in a cave. That's the first line of this book. And that's about the only line that has survived. A man sits alone in a cave. And then I go into describing what he's doing in the cave. His eyes are closed. His chin is in his hands. He's got hair that reaches down to his waist. He's got a beard that tumbles over his knuckles and reaches the floor. There's nothing else in the cave except this little pool of glowing water. And out of the pool of this glowing water comes voices, billions of voices. They're the voices of everybody on earth. They want one thing only, and he hears every voice. And I have probably rewritten that 100 million times.
Well, that's pretty good.
You know, and tomorrow I'll probably go in and change another word, and it just ding, 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 ding. It's just like you're playing with the knobs a little bit. And at some point you have to let that go. And
who else knows about the book? We haven't talked about it yet, but I'm assuming your lovely wife Janine knows about it.
My wife knows about it.
Does she help you with it? Do you? I should say, do you ask for anything? Hey, take a look at this. Do you like this? Do you do that?
I ask a handful of people to read my books as they go along, and they're not the people you would probably think. Yeah, I'll have an editor, and that person will read it. I'll read it out loud to my wife. She doesn't like me to read. She doesn't like to take the stuff and read it. She likes to sit where I'm sitting right now, which is in this little couch in my office, and I'll read it out loud to her. And I won't look at her because I don't want to see if she's making a face or anything. So I'll read it sitting over there by the computer, and she'll sit here. And I'll read sometimes for 20, 30 minutes, you know, and then I'll stop. I'll say, what do you think? And, you know, I'm waiting on her to say.
Is she honest?
Yes, but she's also very nice.
Of course.
So I try not to read anything to her until I feel that it's any good. But she's pretty encouraging. Every now and then she'll ask a question. But she's one. In this book, I've let my Belgian nephew, who was in town, because he's into fantasy, and he loves fantasy books and things like that and all that, you know. And although he's never read anything of mine before, I gave it to him. I said, you know, you're kind of an interesting reader for a book like this because this is an unusual book and it takes place in kind of magical world. I'd like your thoughts on it. So he read it, even though he's never read anything by me before.
Would you change anything based on what he said?
He had a very good suggestion. Yeah, that I've worked in that I didn't think of. And it's yeah. You get something from everybody. You try not to give it to somebody who's going to be overly critical, overly analytical, because it's a little bit like opening an oven when a cake isn't even half baked yet and saying to somebody, so what do you think of how it tastes? And if it's not someone who understands the process, they're going to go, well, it's to this and it's to that, it's to this. And you want to say to them, yeah, but it's not baked yet. You're not allowing for the baking. So you really want to just give it to some people who are just going to read it as an idea. So I have a brother-in-law who's a very enthusiastic reader, and he lives over in Europe, and I send it to him, and he always seems to have some good ideas. And that's it. That's really it. I mean, somebody might wander along, and I'll just say, I really trust you. Will you take a look at these 50 pages I have? Tell me what you think. But for the most part, it's less than a half a dozen people ever read it before it's turned in.
And you have no problem with it. How does it make you feel when you let somebody read your book before it's done?
Oh, I like it if I'm going to get something.
You appreciate the critique?
Yeah, if I'm going to get something good or honest out of it. And, my editor and I were talking yesterday, and he said, yeah, I don't really love this part. It can be shorter. It's fine, but I don't need that many pages. Okay, I'm all right with that. Yeah, that's where it's good to have been a newspaper writer. You have to throw out so much of your stuff in the newspaper world anyhow, just to make it fit or to get the deadline or whatever, that you're not married to every word. And I've learned that, you can't treat every word like a precious, precious, precious jewel. You have to kill your babies, as they say, and once you've learned how to do that, I'll fight for a few sentences. Now, come on, man, that's the essence of the whole thing. I'm not losing that sentence, but for the most part, I don't mind changing it.
We're going to talk in our next podcast specifically more about the book. I think I might have promised that the last time, but I'm definitely going to do it this time because there's many things to talk about.
Good thing you're not charging for this.
And I may even edit this part out.
People will want their money back.
We're speaking with Mitch Albom about his next book, which we haven't even talked about the title yet. We'll do that